Hello and welcome back to Friday Night Bytes. And welcome back, Scott.
Hey, I'm still here.
Scott, welcome back.
I thought you fired me, but I was just on a leave of absence.
No. Yep. We are so glad we missed you, man. We missed you.
Who's
And
we?
all of us, all of our listeners.
Uh,
But yes, it's Friday night. But well, it's not Friday night right now, but it will be when you guys listen to this episode, maybe.
that's how it works.
But yeah, I'm Jordan Darling.
Scott
With
Risdall,
me is Scott Risdall. Oh man.
long time
Yeah,
no see.
yeah. Well, we got by, with a little help from my friends.
Yeah, I heard.
But you know what? You're the real deal.
It's the we're the the special sauce. What? Come up with a food analogy quick.
And I'm not. Yeah, we're the secret recipe.
Yeah, potatoes and gravy here.
Yeah, but yeah. Well, I mean, and no shade on our guests. Joe Malmberg and April Marduk. They were phenomenal.
Yeah,
So
very cool that they could join you.
yeah, those are some great episodes, and hopefully we can have some more guests as well to kind of sweeten the pot.
There it goes.
Today we're talking about ways your multi-factor authentication can be bypassed. You got MFA? Well, you're still not safe.
I thought we spent the last 10 episodes telling everybody how essential MFA was and that it can protect them.
Well, wrong.
Asterisk. There's more to the story.
Yeah, we're going to talk MFA fatigue, machine in the middle. We're going to talk, and the dreaded cookie monster. Stealing cookies.
Cool. But first,
speaking of stealing cookies, my bite. I'm gonna have a little twist. All right, in honor of cookie theft.
Mm.
All right, I went with a little twist this week. So it's a place called Cookie Cart.
Yep, I've got it up here.
Yeah. All right. Yep. So here's the thing. We've used them a lot for gifts for clients and stuff. Sometimes Lisa, our dispatcher, will buy a box of these cookies as like a gift, for an employee birthday or something. And they're great. They have a bakery on Broadway in Minneapolis. They got a bakery on Payne Avenue in St. Paul, right near the office. But not only are they great tasting cookies made from quality ingredients, Scott, but they're a nonprofit doing some pretty great things. They provide kind of this first job experience to the local youth. So if you're a youth, if you're a youth, if you're a youth locally, they help provide young people, like they give them a job, but they also help them develop life skills and leadership skills, through the on the job and like classroom experiences that they get with it. Like it's just such a great thing to pour
Yeah, that's
into
really cool.
developing our young people and their futures with real life business skills and trade skills and all that stuff put together. It's really cool to see. So these cookies get made by these teens, and they're learning things and they're growing and they're developing. And I would say, for when you buy these cookies, no, actually, I would rather say it this way: for every cookie you eat, for every cookie I eat, I am supporting and providing a job for young people in the area to learn and develop skills. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have had them before, and they are quite good. What's your favorite Cookie Cart cookie?
I would say it's the ginger snap. I've always been a kind of a sucker for ginger snap.
Same. The snickerdoodles are also really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we usually get like the bakery sampler.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, awesome. And locations on each side of the metro, so easy to find if you're looking.
They can do special occasions, decorate some cookies and stuff. So, support the local youths.
Do they deliver?
They do deliver.
Oh man, that makes it too easy. All right. Well,
What do
that's
you got?
cool.
What do you got?
Yeah. So I've got something completely different. This is called Bole Ethiopian Cuisine, and this one
Mm,
also has two locations, one in St. Paul and one in Minneapolis. I've only been to the St. Paul location, but which actually I think is pretty new, like maybe right beginning of COVID, maybe like 2020, 2021. Um, but really, really good Ethiopian food. Have you had Ethiopian food, Jordan?
yeah, I love Ethiopian food. I went to a place, a different place than this. I've never been here, but yeah, it's great.
Cool. Yeah, it's it's kind of Middle Eastern, kind of Indian almost, right?
Hmm.
But uniquely East African, uniquely Ethiopian in the spices and the dosa, right? The sourdough bread that you get in the
Right.
little rolls that you kind of pick off and use to scoop everything else up.
Yeah, that's
Um,
like that. That's the that bread with like all the little craters in it and stuff that you see in the
yeah,
pictures, right?
exactly. And actually, I say dosa, but I think that's the Indian word for that kind of bread. They call it what? Guess I should have looked this up ahead of time. Maybe it's dosa. Mm, shoot. Well, joke's on me for not knowing what it's called. But yeah, it's really good. The sambusa is really good too. So kind of like samosa. It's kind of a little pastry, savory pastry with beans and onions and garlic and other seasonings.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So if you like East African food, it's just so good. It tastes like it's fresh out of the Middle East or fresh out of East Africa rather. Um, so check them out. That's what I got this week.
Awesome. Great pick.
Thanks. So, MFA bypass. So we've been telling people that MFA can protect you against, and here's a statistic we'll refer back to, 99.9% of all attacks on your employee accounts, right? I mean,
Right.
that's great. Not much in life has a 99.9% success rate, you know?
You're right. That's it's pretty good. Yeah.
But it turns out that when everyone takes that advice and turns on MFA to protect their accounts, the hackers don't just hang up their hats and go home, right?
Yeah.
They look for weaknesses in the MFA process, weaknesses in people, weaknesses in the technology, and they exploit it just like they do with everything else. So the goalposts move, as happens all the time in security, and now we find ourselves, up here with this new set of challenges, and so we're going to talk through a couple of those today.
Yeah. Wonderful. This will be a great show. So stick around. We'll try to explain it. We're gonna dig into it, but also kind of explain it. But it's gonna be really interesting to you guys because this is some crazy stuff.
Yeah, yeah, true that. Um, yeah, so first of all, what are MFA bypass attacks? How are hackers in general getting around this, the silver bullet of account security? Um, we found this article and it talks about kind of three different classes of MFA attacks. And we use this as kind of our structure for this episode. The three different ones are MFA fatigue.
So
Um,
the MFA solution gets tired of working and
it's
just
a
kind
it's a
of stop.
union it's a union authenticator, so it only works 8 hours a day. Um, no, fatigue is a human thing. So this is fatigue in the person who owns the account, right?
Yes,
Um,
I've felt fatigue before.
I
Yes.
have two. Yep. And we'll come back to each of these in detail. But the second one is token theft, which is someone, the hacker basically waiting until the user has already completed the process, the authentication process with MFA. And our viewers may not know how this works under the hood, but once you go through all the steps of authentication, maybe it's 50 steps, maybe you have 50-step authentication, right? You got to do a little dance, you got to have 5 cell phones, you got to be in the right part of the world, whatever it is. But at the end, you still get this token back, which is
Yeah.
basically still a password that
Right.
you send to the application that you're trying to authenticate to. And for the rest of your session, that's how they know who you are and what you have access to see. So
Yeah.
just wait till the person does all the hard MFA work, and then go right on their computer and pluck that token out.
Yep.
And the last one is machine in the middle, or man in the middle, or adversary in the middle. There's a lot of names for this kind of attack, but basically it's just, finding a way to get in the middle of that authentication process, and pick out the bits that they need to be able to authenticate themselves to their own session for the application.
Yeah.
And we have a cool example of a way that this is done nowadays. There's actually free open source code, for educational use only, that people can use to carry out this type of attack, and we'll explain how it works in detail. And then at
Beautiful.
the Yep, and then at the end we'll just talk about ways to avoid it. We'll come back to this. So
But see, they're already thinking, you guys, you're going to tell us how to avoid it, but then you're going to say that's not enough.
job
You just keep,
security.
you keep dangling the carrot in front of us.
The the goalposts do keep moving, Jordan. They don't stay put. So we're just trying to help people. We're trying to help the little guys stay ahead of these cyber threats, right?
Yep, yep. I mean, little guy, they might be big, they might be, but yes, there's no silver bullet. And this is the message to all of us in the industry, people that are tech savvy and people that are just whoever you are, the average guy.
Right. So let's start with MFA fatigue. Um, so we have an article on this, and it's not really something that even needs a whole article to explain, but we found
Right.
one anyway. Half the screen is ads here. I apologize. But Jordan, could you explain what MFA fatigue is and how it works? And then I have a quick video queued up to just kind of show people what this looks like.
Yeah, that video is good because it does the explaining. It's basically just they keep doing it. They've already got your password, so that they have to kind of have that already, right? So they just keep entering it, and so then you keep getting this notification to approve this, and you might deny it. Well, what's this? Deny, but they want you to get so tired of doing that, so annoyed that finally you're just like, will someone make this phone stop? And they approve it.
Yep, I'm rolling the video here. So you keep talking, I'll keep talking. But basically, like you said, so the attacker has to have your password and your username already, and that's run-of-the-mill phishing, or finding your credentials online in a compromise, breach, dump, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. They have that information. So before MFA, that would have been enough to get in. Now it's enough for them to trigger that MFA prompt. And if you're Joe user sitting at your desk, you're working on your spreadsheet or whatever, and all of a sudden an MFA prompt pops up, and you say, "I didn't do that." And just like your security team has coached you, you say, "No, you deny," right?
Right.
And then it happens again, and it happens again, and it
How
happens
much of this
again.
can you take before you finally just say approve?
Yep,
You know,
yep. Uh, the video is so short we already got through it, but I'm going to try to pause on the last frame here.
you can almost in the video you can almost see, like, I mean, I'm sure it's the guy's just playing an act, but like you can almost see that he's like,
Ah,
fine, approve.
whatever. And then he throws his phone across the room in frustration, right? Yeah. So it's a really simple attack, but it apparently is surprisingly successful,
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I would add another twist to it too, because there's also like you might already just kind of be, maybe this isn't fatigue, maybe there's another word for this, but I also think about it like when you work for a company that maybe has where you're approving MFA all stinking day.
right.
Like you're getting into 10 different accounts, you're logging it, and so your phone's just always kind of pinging, you're doing stuff, like it's almost like they could do it and you just kind of are so automatically trained to be like, yep, I'm at work. Oh, okay, yep. And
Yep. Well, and think about this. So, assuming that you're a person, let's say you're new at a company, maybe, or your company just takes security seriously, or whatever. The only prompts that you're going to have seen on your phone are going to be from legitimate sessions, right? If you've never been attacked this way before, you're used to approving like you say, approving every prompt that flies in front of your face. It's on your phone after all, right? It says your account maybe right there. Depends on the MFA client, but
right.
why wouldn't you approve it? Right? There's never been a case before where you haven't approved it. So how do you train somebody to be sharp when they've never gone through the alternative?
Right.
Yep. and it's successful. And so once that's done, Jordan may log out, the user may log out, but depending on your company's authentication policies, they may let that token exist for months, right? They may
Right.
let you keep it for 30 days, for 60 days. I think Microsoft's default is like 70 days for 365 accounts. So one wrong move lets that hacker be in your account for 2 months and change.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and you're right though. There are, maybe we'll touch on this at the end too when we're talking about like solutions, but you're right. If you're using a an MFA solution, there are ways to kind of see what's happening,
mhm.
like what are they logging into? It might even show like a location too.
Yep.
And so if you're at least savvy enough to kind of look, what is this thing? What's it asking for and where is it coming from?
Yep. Yeah, and we'll talk solutions at the end. So we'll come back to some of those things because Microsoft is actually making a change in about a week, where they're going to require all customers to have a slightly different MFA experience. You're probably familiar with this too,
Hmm.
but it gives more information to the end user and requires them to do a little more than just hit yes, leave me alone, right,
Yep.
before you can approve. So we'll talk about that. So that's MFA fatigue. The next one is token theft. So again, there's a lot of different ways that someone can
I
steal.
prefer cookie theft.
Yeah, well, a cookie is can contain a token. It's one way to move a token around. It's probably the most common way when you're talking about web applications, right?
Right.
But a token in general is just basically a really long, text representation of a binary value. Typically, it's a long string of characters, not unlike a password, that is shared between you and the service, the website that you're accessing. And with every request, it can send that back, and the website can check to see if the cookie is present, and that's how it knows who you are. So if you log into your bank, there's a unique value that is Jordan's session on the 27th or whatever of April, and no one else has that, and so that's the way that it knows that you are you. And again, that token isn't granted until after you complete the full authentication process, including the MFA bit. So you've already gone through MFA. Here's your token.
Right.
If the attacker can steal that, they're in. They don't need MFA.
Yeah.
So,
And
oh,
and
go ahead.
some average guys out there, like even you know uh, understanding like what you can do with a browser, like there's like to many people a browser is just a browser. You know where to type in the web site address, and then you know how to interact with the site, but you don't understand all the different pieces that are
Yeah.
you can do to kind of manipulate the browser. And like that might be eye opening for some, when you see like how you can import that. Like it almost makes you think, well, why do they let you import, you know, tokens? Like why do they let you import that stuff? I,
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the web. Real quick digression. The web is based on a number of open standards, right? You're talking HTTP, the protocol that sends and receives web pages. Um, HTTPS, which is the secure, encrypted version of that. Style sheets, JavaScript. There's all these different kind of technologies that were all developed by consortiums and multiple vendors because at the end of the day, the web has to be usable on a Windows machine, on a Mac. You have to be able to run your web servers on Windows, on Linux. We want graphical displays. We want everything that we have in Web 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever we're on now. So you can't lock a browser down like that. Corporations can to an extent with policy, but for the average Joe, the web browser is meant to be part of an open ecosystem.
right,
And so if even if the browser locked down the ability to like take in tokens that weren't sent from websites, someone would just fire up another browser, get Firefox instead of Chrome, right? Or write a Python script or write a PowerShell script. It's you can't trust that.
right.
That fence isn't there. There's no fence.
It's almost like, I mean, you'd be locking out, maybe people that would, you know, do things for good, rather than like, but you're not going to lock out the person that is going to find other ways to get around it.
Right. It has way more skills and access to free tools and developer skills. Right. They're going to end run all of your protections all day long. So one way to do this is called Evil Jinx. Or sorry, am I jumping ahead? I am jumping ahead.
Yeah, you got to do the
Yep.
the demo of the token theft.
These are all related to token theft. So
Yeah.
so that's my confusion. Let me switch windows here. So I've got Firefox open, and I'm using something called Juice Shop. Do you know about Juice Shop, Jordan?
I have heard about it. I've heard about it. I think from you, basically.
Yeah. So Juice Shop is the de facto uh, web. Sorry, I'm trying to think. Web security kind of testing and learning environment. So it's developed by OWASP here. OWASP is nonprofit online organization that helps track trends in website security and provide advice on
Hmm.
how to secure your website and how to learn the skills like web penetration testing skills. Um, Give me just a second to get this opened. I will be right there. So Juice Shop has a whole lot of vulnerabilities built into it. That's the point. Um, and uh, and one of the things you can do with it is learn how to steal authentication tokens. Just got to grab the password that I saved here.
And so they have kind of a, like you said, this is for educational purposes only,
It
right?
is. Yep. I mean, this is something you have to run yourself. So I should say
Okay.
that. This is running on an AWS instance that I spun up yesterday. It's just a really simple. They have a Docker container for it, so you can just basically run 3 commands, and here it is, right?
Mhm.
So really easy to set up. It even has its own built-in self-sanitizing feature. So I think every 24 hours or something like that, it will revert all the changes that you've made when you've been trying to hack away at it. So it's just like this fresh learning experience every time you show up. It's really, really well put together. So let me see if it sanitized me out. It did not. Okay, cool. So I have this account. I just created a random account. And I did enable MFA. So there's my MFA code. And there you go. I'm in Juice Shop. We got banana juice. We got apple pomace. We got the best beat shop salesman artwork if you like juice artwork. Um,
Oh, who doesn't?
yeah, but the point is, it's a full featured web app, right? You can do customer feedback, you can find documentation on it, but the core functionality that you're supposed to learn with is the shopping cart stuff. So you can add stuff to your shopping cart. You can go in and play around with your account info. Um, it again is a full featured app. Meant to mimic how a real web app works, although it doesn't look very serious, and that's the point. So this is our example. So I'm going to log out again, and I'm going to fire up something called Zap, which is the Z Attack Proxy. It's a it's a web application testing tool. It's also free. It's also made by OWASP, but it's a Java-based application that you can use to intercept, inspect, replay, tamper with, basically like a Swiss Army knife for changing and inspecting web traffic as it goes between your computer and the server.
Okay.
Um, so we're going to just capture some traffic, and we can see what the token looks like, and then we can see how easy it would be to take that, move that somewhere else, and use it to get into someone's account.
Now, can an average Joe set all this up?
It depends on who the average Joe is and how comfortable they are watching YouTube videos, basically. All of this is easy to find. You'll find some whippersnapper teenager who's happy to explain how all this works. But installing Zed is as easy as installing, or Zap is as easy as installing Java and then the application itself. It's a Windows, click next until you're done type of deal. It's a little harder to set up the actual proxy, um, but it's not hard. You go in here, you go to proxies, you set where you want to run the proxy. So I'm running it just on the local computer.
And explain what a proxy is.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you. A proxy is just there's many different kinds of proxies, but in general, a proxy is something that waits for connections and then accepts those connections and then forwards them on to a destination. So reasons you might have a proxy are website filtering. If you're a company and you want to make sure your employees only go to trusted, known, approved sites, you would have a proxy. You wouldn't allow any internet traffic to go out other than through the proxy, and then the proxy is able to look at all the pages they're going to and say yes or no, good, bad, right?
Yeah.
There's also reverse proxies. We won't talk about those too much, but you can put a proxy in front of your web server, and you can use it to inspect traffic for security attacks. You can use it to perform authentication. So if your website itself doesn't have authentication built in, you can have a proxy that accepts those connections, does the authentication, does the login process for you, and then forwards the successful connections onto the web server. So it's just an intermediate server, or in this case, workstation that.
I I used to support a high school, and and the amount of uh, fighting I had to do against the students trying to get around the
Mm-hmm,
proxies
mm-hmm.
and stuff like
There's.
and ultimately kind of using their own proxy like that was like the popular thing was to
Yep.
go to a site that was a proxy, so then like that site wasn't blocked, but then it could give you access to, you know.
Yep. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic that we could maybe do sometime is ways to bypass traffic inspection or filtering. There's
Mhm.
so many cool ones like tunneling over DNS or tunneling over, encrypted connections or tunneling over. There's just so many cool ways that people have found to get around those restrictions. So maybe we'll do a little show and tell sometime. Okay, so I'm in Zap. I'm gonna start a new session to clear up the screen a little bit. And here we are. So as you can see, there's already some background traffic going on here to Juice Shop. And this is just normal WebSocket stuff where the client is and the server are just talking to each other and sort of checking in. Um, but you'll see it's pretty infrequent. Now, if I jump back to the Juice Shop here, the interface site, I'm going to log in. So log in. I'm going to throw in my email address, and I'm copying and pasting all this, so bear with me. So username, password, and then MFA token, since we have that turned on already. And cool, we're in. We're in the Juice Shop. Orders and payment history. I can change my password, everything you would expect in a web application. So now, let's go back to Zap. And let's go back to Zap on the recording. And we could actually look at each web request that was made and the responses that came back, whether they were successful or not, the size of each one. Zap even starts looking for security vulnerabilities as it's inspecting this traffic, which is pretty cool. But let's just look at a couple of these really quick. So we can see, this is a request to this address, this IP address, and this page. The host is the IP. The user agent, my browser was Mozilla on Windows. All sorts of cool information that gets sent to the server whenever you want to, retrieve a website. Then we can go down a little farther, and we can start to see what happens when you log in, right? So because I'm proxying, because I'm intercepting and inspecting these connections, I can actually see right here the email address and the password that were sent to the server by my browser. Now, of course, I wanted this to happen, right? No exploitation necessary. This was on purpose. But we'll talk in a little bit, the next type of MFA bypass, we'll talk about how this might be done in the real world. For our purposes here, we just want to see that after I'm successfully authenticated, here's the MFA verification step. You can see the token I entered right here. Then we're fully authenticated. And you can see, I'll highlight it here in the video, there's something called an authorization header. And it says, hey, I'm the bearer of, and then it lists all these random, gobbledygook looking letters and numbers and symbols, and that's the cookie. That's your cookie card. That's the
Cookie.
this is my passport to this site, right? And so when I send additional requests, I'm going to include this every time, and this value is stored on my computer in a cookie, generally. Um, and so my browser can keep sending it back to the site to say, yep, it's still me, I'm still logged in, this is still my session. So this is a really powerful thing. This is what's the difference between me having access to my bank account and you having access to my bank account. Now, if I'm an attacker, and let's say I am able to install some malware, or even maybe like a rogue browser extension onto your computer, Jordan, I can pull this stuff right off your hard drive. I can pull this stuff right out of the browser, um, or the browser profile, and I can load it up in my own proxy or in my own browser, kind of craft my own request server to include this and the other bits that are necessary, and lo and behold, it thinks that I'm you, or it
Yeah.
thinks that you're me. And that can keep going. And in this case, so these are typically, for your normal web app, these are typically valid until the person logs out. So if I was able to steal this from you, I might go in and kick off a wire transfer if this was your bank as quickly as I could, or I might go in and change the password to your account and disable MFA, right? So when
Right.
you log out, you're done banking for today. Maybe you don't come back for a couple of days. Now I'm in your account, I have access, and I have all the time I need to log in, do what I
Yep.
need to do.
Yep. I we ran into someone who that happened to, their company Facebook page, and it's you can get your page back, but it was a hassle,
Yep,
and they had free reign to their Facebook page for as long as it took for them to sort it out with Facebook.
yep, yep. So yeah, how it happens? Just to wrap that up, it could be malware. It could be it could be someone like a cross-site scripting vulnerability in a website. You don't find those as much with like banks because they put a lot of resources into securing their code. But there's lots of ways through simple phishing that a poorly secured site,
Hmm.
if someone gets phished, it'll send all their cookies to some other site, which is bad news for you as the holder. So lots of ways, and we'll talk at the end again about how to prevent that. The third and final MFA bypass technique that we want to talk about is the man in the middle, adversary in the middle, machine in the middle, whatever you want to call it. Um, and this is where we get into the cool evil jinx as
Yeah.
our case study. So what did we want to say about this one up front? Um,
Um, I don't know. I think it's just really interesting because basically what the user feels like they're on the site that they were trying to get to. They think, if they're logging into Facebook, so to speak, it feels like they're logging into Facebook. It looks like Facebook. It's the idea of relay. I think that's what's really interesting about it
mhm,
is, and we should explain that. But it's just passing through this stuff. The user just thinks, oh, this is working fine. It's a normal experience for them. And as we'll kind of take a look, I mean, it kind of they're it's up to the attacker what happens. I mean, they'll
mhm.
redirect them at some point somewhere, and they could make it feel like they everything's fine and dandy, or they could send them who knows where. They're just in complete control of this attacker,
Yep.
but it feels like they're interacting with their normal site.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really ingenious, and it turns out that just like you can proxy or relay, username and password entering process, right? You can do the same thing for MFA, and that's what we'll look at with this Evil Jinx tool. I have the diagram up here on the screen that kind of shows the different steps for just a basic man-in-the-middle attack. So the victim sends a request to a website. Now, um, we should note that if you go to the right site, right? Let's say
Right.
you have Instagram or Facebook bookmarked, and you click that bookmark, you're going to go to that site. The attacker for lots of reasons, encryption being one of them, DNS being another, the attacker, it's not easy for them to get in the middle. They have to work pretty hard. Um, so usually this starts with phishing.
Right.
And so someone sends you an email. Maybe it looks like it's, Facebook needs you to confirm your account. Go ahead and log in. They're not asking for your password directly, but they're sending you somewhere that looks like a Facebook logon page. In this example, it's instagram.macrosec.xyz.
Yeah.
um, and that's a server, that's a website that they control, right? But if they're good, they've done all they can to make it look like the real thing. So they get the request, they forward it on to the real server, so they relay it, just like you said. And then, so as far as the legitimate server at the far end of this connection knows, the request is coming from the hacker, right? It's not even
Mhm.
coming from Jordan, it's coming from Mr. Hacker.
In
Um,
my head, I picture like a relay race, and I just picture like a little man inside of the computer, and you enter something, he grabs it and he races and he hands it to the legitimate site. The legitimate site hands him the baton back, and he runs back
mhm.
to you. That's what's happening.
But in this situation, somebody kidnapped the real Scott and they put a Scott mask on, and you handed the baton to the guy with the Scott mask, and he ran away with it and
He-
went around the track, right?
exactly.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. So yeah, so the beauty of this
and ate
attack
all the
is
cookies.
the beauty of the attack is that the client is never communicating directly with the server, at least throughout the authentication process. They are taking it in one hand, handing the baton to the other one, and the server is none the wiser. They think that the hacker is you, and so and as you hinted at the very end of this, the hacker can send the actual successful authentication process completion page. Right? They can redirect you to your homepage, um, fully authenticated, and they have no idea that there was anybody in between
Yeah.
because everything worked out the way it's supposed to. Right?
hmm
Meanwhile,
Me, me,
go ahead.
Meanwhile, they captured everything.
Meanwhile, they did. They have both the username and password. They have the MFA token, which by design isn't valid for very long, but they also got the session token. The server sent back the session token, and that's valid as long as the server or as long as the user is logged in. So,
hmm
yep. So, so to try to demonstrate, because it is a little confusing. I did set up. I'm sorry, I didn't set up. I found a good video about Evil Jinx that shows how it works, and I believe the use case is a Microsoft sign-in. But let me remind myself here. Oh nope, it's Instagram, just like the article hints. So here's a fake Instagram login page. If you can see, hopefully this is able to show up on the recording, but um, what they're actually going to here is www.accounts-logins.com,
hmm
not Instagram. But it's
Yeah.
a
So if you're paying attention, if you're, this goes back to maybe a hat tip to the basics, right?
mhm.
If you're remembering stuff, if you're trained and you're remembering, no, don't go to that site through the email. Go to the actual site. Or if you did click on the link in the email, if you see, hold on a second, that's not Instagram's site. Like if you're training yourself, it just takes training and thinking and knowing where to look and pay attention.
Yep. And I'll add to that any email filtering, any email security service worth its salt nowadays will inspect these links in emails, and they'll go and look and see, does this look like a page that we've seen before? Does this look like a Microsoft login page or an Instagram
Right.
login page? And they'll pull those out as phishing. It's not 100% successful. Maybe it's 99.9% successful, but if a few of these slip through, you're at their mercy. So let me roll the video here. Um, so they go ahead and sign in to the lookalike page. And again, this is all Evil Jinx 2 in the background. It's a fully functional login page with a proxy built right into it. And as soon as these things are sent to the man in the middle here, they're relayed to the real Instagram in this case, um, and then the results are collected back. So now they're entering their MFA token. And again, MFA tokens typically rotate every 30 seconds, or they're only valid for a short period of time if they come in through SMS maybe. Um, but they're relaying them fast enough that that doesn't matter. It's going straight to
Right.
the application in real time. So in this case, once that was all captured, they sent you right back to google.com for whatever reason. And then this person doing the demo goes to Instagram because they're like, hey, what the heck happened? And they're not logged in. So in this case, they didn't, middleman all of the information back to the user. They just said, as soon as I've got the token, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
And probably did whatever they were wanting to do. But it's it's very successful. And
But yeah, I mean, you kind of see that you're at their mercy. Like they could have sent you wherever they wanted.
yep, yep, they could. And at that point, it probably doesn't matter. They can try to be stealthy, but ultimately, they have some goal. They're going to hopefully act on that as soon as they can. Um, what's left up on the demo screen here is kind of the command line behind the scenes of Evil Jinx 2, and it's showing like the token that's right there and ready to go. And so they've already forgotten about you as the user, right? They're on
Yeah.
to accomplish their objectives. So,
And again, like you could have done everything right. Like so, this kind of attack. That's why I mean, it's so dangerous because if you didn't notice that you were on the wrong site, if you didn't notice where you were at, if you did a couple things wrong at the beginning, you can have all of the MFA in the world, the best MFA out there, but they're not. They're letting you just get past that, and then they're hijacking it at that point. So
yep,
like you already you just let them in the door. You're just kind of
yeah.
you can have the best security system, but if you let them just walk right in the door with you, you're done.
Yeah, and for all of these things, it turns out that they're not really attacks against the technology, right? They're attacks against the people in general.
Right.
MFA fatigue is definitely a people attack. Man in the Middle, starting as a phishing attack, is attacking people. The technology, the security, protections, they're working as designed. But the person sleeping at the wheel, and if they're not staying frosty, they're hacked.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's some examples. Let's close out by talking about what you can do. Let's move those goalposts a little farther and talk
Yes.
about what you can do to protect yourself from these things. Um, do you want to start with fatigue?
Yeah, so fatigue you can do number matching, you can which is essentially instead of doing the push only. You know, the push notification is really convenience, right? It pops up, it says do you want to log in and you hit yes and it's convenience. Number matching is kind of going back to no, let's make them enter a number. Let's make sure there's some sort of interaction beyond just pushing a button
Hmm.
where you're putting in some sort of a code that was sent to you. Um, that would thwart the fatigue thing where you're just kind of pushing deny, 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 accept.
Yep. Yeah, and it forces you to be looking at the two parts of the process at the same time. You kind of said
Right.
that, but here's the number and the login page. Here's your phone, right? This didn't show up randomly, right? You know it's coming from here and going to here, so it connects those dots for the user.
And it could be either way, right? It could be that you're entering the number from the MFA software on your phone into the site still, or there's maybe a number on the site or that you're entering into your device.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah, one of those would be kind of the older school, OTP, the
yeah,
rotating code on your phone where it's not a notification that shows up, right? You have to proactively enter your code, and that you're right, that is still safer than the sort of the current state of push notifications because
there's also the idea of lockouts. You know, like
hmm
so having it where your account locks out and they can't even get to the final you know authentication request because after 5 times they asked or something,
yep,
your account's now locked out. Assuming that it's just like the brute force account stuff. It's a brute force would be like the idea of just trying a bunch of different passwords to try to get in. Well, most places now you try too many passwords and you fail, you get locked out of your account for a period of time. And so it's kind of the same idea with MFA. You keep asking for this MFA request, pretty soon they just say, nah, something's not right here, you're locked out for a while.
Yeah, I've seen some services that instead of fully locking you out right away, they'll throw up a captcha, right? So they'll say, "Okay, you got something wrong in that login sequence. You're gonna have to solve a captcha, you stupid human. And if you can figure this out, then I'm gonna prompt you for your password again and your MFA again. And if you get it right, then I'll let you in." So it's just keeping more barriers between not the dumb user, but the potentially compromised user and the service.
And say the other one, like from episode one. Call back to episode one.
Passkeys.
Passkeys.
Passkeys,
Yes.
unfishable, certified unfishable passkeys. Right, having a hardware security device that has nothing to, there's no prompts, it's not on your phone. It could be on your phone, but at best, it's a physical thing you hold that plugs into your computer or communicates via, wireless communications. Um, yep.
If you missed episode one of Friday Night Bites, it still exists. It's there. You can go see it. And Scott does an amazing job demoing passkeys.
One more that you skipped over here is MFA first. I've seen a couple of companies start doing this where they'll ask you your username first, but not your password. Once you enter the username, then it asks you for your MFA code, which is pretty cool. So instead of asking for the thing that changes once a year or once every 3 months first, they ask for the thing that changes every 30 seconds first. And then, a hacker is not going to be able, unless they've stolen your phone or whatever, they're not going to have access to that quickly. So you get past that step and then you enter your password. So that makes so much more sense when you think about it
Yeah.
because they can't get you with this fatigue stuff because they don't know that rotating code, right?
Yep.
So so that's fatigue. Lots of ways to protect the poor user from MFA fatigue.
Yeah. And take a nap too. I mean,
Yeah,
for
yeah. Have a coffee. Stay frosty. Token theft. So this really comes down to protecting the endpoint, protecting the laptop or whatever from someone stealing that token. So having a good antivirus or nowadays EDR tool that's able to look for weird things like applications being installed or programs being run that are behaving strangely or match antivirus signatures. Um, and then similarly, having filtering on email, especially to prevent some of those attacks from even arriving at the endpoint, where they can start to find ways to access those tokens when they're stored locally. So basically, protect your endpoint, right?
yeah.
And then last, do you want to take it out with man in the middle?
Yeah. You man in the middle, machine in the middle, whatever we want to call it. You again, like you touched on with the email filtering. If you got a nice email filter and web filter, you can maybe smoke these out because again, you're going to a different site. You're not at the right site. Um, and so how did you get there? And I would even add, in all of this stuff, there's kind of that underlying thing that you hear so often on the show, end user security training and really like understanding these things, what to look for, that URL matters. And there's some free tools, free ways to educate yourself on what to even look for, how a domain works. You probably know a lot of that already. You just need a little push to kind of put it over the edge to be like, okay, that's why it's important to double check how they do that and how they make it look, like we looked at some that are way off from what it was supposed to be, but there's ways to, if you have Instagram with two eyes, you might not see that so quickly,
Yep.
and passkeys
And passkeys.
because passkeys are
Just stop just stop people from being phished, including their MFA, right?
mhm.
Yep. I think we'll get there. Companies are going to have to swallow this 25 to $50 or more per device per employee, and just managing all those devices. A lot of companies have enough trouble managing their keeping track of their laptops. Much less a keychain thing that every employee has. And if the employee forgets their pass key on a given day, what do you do? Do you give them a new one? Do you have a backup MFA method? Um, it's not easy, but it is the best solution.
Yeah. And again, kind of closing up here. Yes, we told you MFA is great. And yes, it is. It's not the silver bullet you hoped it was, but it's great. You got to start there. I like how that first article, what did it say? It kind of said, yeah, yeah, you still need MFA, because if you don't even have MFA, you know,
None of this
like you,
matters.
yeah, you left the barn door open. You're worried about how good the lock is on the door, but it doesn't matter because
Right.
you left the barn door open.
Right.
So,
So we're talking about that 0.01% of attacks, right? That's what we've been trying to solve today. Is
yeah,
and those take so much more time and effort for attackers. And this is kind of one of those golden rules of the internet is basically you don't have to swim faster than the shark. You just have to swim faster than the guy next to you, right? Don't have really bad
that's when you
security.
swim, Scott.
Faster than you.
Oh man, how do you know?
Find out this summer. Um, but yeah, just you hate to say it because you don't wish ill will on the company down the road, but like really, there's benefit in doing these common sense things and not being the lowest hanging fruit, not being the easy target. And MFA is one of the best ways that you can prevent yourself from doing that.
Yeah, and I know I've thrown around the word like kind of basic and stuff like that, but I think fundamental is a better word. Like, because some of the stuff, yeah, for the average guy, it maybe doesn't seem basic. It's not about basic. It might take some work. You might have to learn some
Mhm.
things, and there might be some advanced things that you put in place. But it really is fundamental things. Like these are things you must have. That's the foundation, and
Mhm.
start with that, before you go and get lured into the next best like flashy gadget that some marketers trying to pitch you as the silver bullet of security. Like, take a step back and just make sure you're doing some of the fundamental things, the foundational things right.
I like that word hygiene, security hygiene, because
Hygiene.
it's very much what you're saying. Like washing your hands is easy, but sometimes people just don't wash their hands because it's another step. They just want to get back to the office. And so they put those signs up in the bathrooms. All employees must wash hands before returning to work, right? And
Yeah.
it's just that. It is the basics, but it's more so it's the cost of doing business, and it's just good habits that people need to be trained into.
And hygiene speaks of the consistency too. It's not a set it and forget it. It's like,
Right.
yeah, you washed your hands yesterday, but you got to wash them again today.
It sucks, doesn't it? Yep. All right. Well, that's a good
Sounds
note to
good.
end on. I'm gonna go have
Yeah,
a,
yeah.
I'm gonna go have a
Cookie
cookie.
monsters out there.
Yep. Yep.
You've got some tools to protect your jar of cookies.
You're welcome.
See you next week on Friday Night Bite. See ya.